How does it feel? A son of high-ranking military officer, a promising diplomat, highly paid bureaucrat and expert in propaganda, 15 years later after his defection, changing bulbs and flushing toilets in Los Angeles. How would you feel? Would you like to take my place? Oh, no. Another reason to think twice is this secret document. This is what prevents many Soviets to defect. It is called характеристика in Russian language, or simply recommendation letter. Every Soviet agent who is assigned to a foreign country has to be co-sponsored by 3 long-standing members of Communist Party. If I defect, all 3 of them will be fired, imprisoned, or executed. 2 of them my friends. This is why I feel worried before. I think twice before defecting. I don't want to endanger their lives. Unlike your Dr. Kissinger, who signed death sentence to half of Asia, and he feels okay. He sleeps well, he eats good, his stool is regular, no problem. But I would feel guilty. I could not live as a normal being if I knew that these guys suffered because of my defection. Besides, you never know. Maybe they will come to power. Maybe they will be better negotiators with your George Shultz. Maybe they will be able to stop the madness of nuclear confrontation. Even if there is 1 in a million chances, I must not endanger their lives. This is one of the reasons why there are not that many defectors from positions like mine. Who defects to your country? Sailors, dancers, you know, the entertainers, but not KGB agents. If you treat us like you treat me, I'm sorry, not too many agents will defect to your side. And yet there is another reason, my family. Even though it was a marriage of convenience, by mistake we made a baby. So what can we do? It's immoral to leave your wife and child behind. Even in the United States, if you have no political reasons to leave your wife, if you have no sensational message to your CIA, it is simply dirty to leave your wife and child behind. In my case, I could not take them with me. Why? Because Indian government, which this media is a neutral government, betrays defectors to the Soviet KGB. After this lady defected in India, and she's Stalin's daughter, if you remember, she defected in '67, 3 years before my defection. Soviet embassy was so mad at Indian government that Soviet embassy forced Indira Gandhi to adopt a law which says, and I quote, "No defector from any country has a right of political asylum in any embassy on territory of India," which, as you may understand, is the highest degree of hypocrisy, because only Soviet defector needs a political asylum. Imagine yourself an American citizen in India and you want to defect to USSR. Do you need a political asylum? I suggest psychiatric asylum. In my case, it was virtually impossible to defect normal way. And I found that my own crazy way. I noticed that there are many American hippies in India, like the one on the left. No shoes, long hair, smoking hashish. I talked to them, I studied their way of life, their counterculture, what they smoke, where they congregate. Then I decided that with my pale European face, if I run away from the embassy, the police will catch me in 5 minutes. But if I dress like the hippie, a crazy Russian in a crowd of crazy Americans, it's very difficult to find. This is what I did. I dressed as a hippie, I joined them, and I disappeared. All the papers reported about my disappearance. Most of the Indian papers carried my picture, description, and promise of 2,000 rupees. There, you see in the middle of the text, under the picture. 2,000 rupees for information leading to my arrest, as if I was a criminal or a murderer. And it was an insult, biggest insult in my life. I thought that my head worth more than 2,000 rupees. They could not find me for a very simple reason. They were looking for this gentleman, and at the time of defection I looked like this. Obviously, not a single sensible detective would ever suspect that a normal Russian diplomat would look like a total idiot. This is probably what saved my life, and another factor was American CIA. They smuggled me out of Bombay airport after I contacted them. They brought me to Greece. They debriefed me for 6 months. They changed my name to that of Thomas Schumann to protect my friends and relatives, to keep me away from mischief and the KGB. And it took KGB 5 years to find me in Canada. This is another proof to you that KGB is not a super smart or super effective agency. It's a huge bureaucracy of bumbling idiots. Their right hand doesn't know what their left hand is doing. They are effective in your country not because they are smart, but because there is no resistance. Because people like American Union of Civil Liberties prevent your FBI and your police from protecting you people against KGB. This is why they're effective. And because there are groups and elites in your country who don't mind KGB at all. They're very paranoid about CIA. Your media is very paranoid about CIA. They don't mind KGB at all. Beautiful people like Bella Abzug are very mad when FBI keeps a file on them. For some strange reason, Bella Abzug doesn't mind KGB keeping file on her. Strange, isn't it? If you have a chance to ask Bella Abzug, ask her on my behalf why she is so peaceful and complacent about KGB keeping files on Bella Abzug. Well, this is basically my life story and my activity, which is described quite accurately in this book by John Barron, KGB Today. This is the first time in the United States when an American writer eventually, after 67 years, discovered that espionage is not the main danger to your people. The main danger, which is described in KGB language as active measures. This is the business I was in for 12 years. And I'm going to explain you the specifics, and I'm going to show you some examples of that. Probably by the end of this lecture, if you are still awake, we'll try to figure out how to recognize this and what to do about it. If you want to stay free and proud nation and a superpower and the hope for all mankind, what to do about this dirty business? You can put on the lights. I'm going to show you something more interesting. Each time I'm talking to your journalists, they ask me, Mr. Schumann, give us one specific evidence, one example, how KGB infiltrates our media. I don't know what they expect from me. Fingerprints or receipts. I, undersigned, Dan Rather, received $1 million from Comrade Andropov for lying to Americans. There are no such receipts. Besides, Dan Rather doesn't need any money from KGB. He's filthy rich himself. We are not talking about something that will stand up in your court simply because your laws are very soft and appeasing to your enemies. There is one overall law in your country. Aiding the enemy is a high treason. But many people in your country do that. Henry Kissinger does for the last 12 years or more. So does Occidental Petroleum, Armand Hammer. So does Ford Company. So does Trilateral Commission and Council on Foreign Relations. And yet they are normal, respected citizens. So where is the focus? Where is the sensitive point? How? Where's the division line between sanity and insanity? Between security of your nation and the unlimited subversion of your country? How to recognize it? Believe me, you don't need experts. I mean, you need experts, but not the type of experts which are staffing your Harvard and Yale and Rand Corporation on the think tanks. I'd rather call them stink tanks. Just try to think. Maybe let's think together. For 60 years, you have intellectuals who spend millions of dollars of taxpayers' money to research Soviet Union and communist system. They are still respected citizens like Comrade Brzezinski and Mr. Arnold Horelik. They are on payroll of your government. That means you, all right? For 60 years, you had failures, one after another. These beautiful researchers give advices to your government, to your Pentagon, right? They navigate your policies. This morning I saw Edward Litwak on your television, on Phil Donahue's show. He is one of the greatest experts in the Center for Strategic Studies or something in Washington, D.C., right? These people receive hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And yet for 60 years or more, they've been given advices to your government which eventually led to what you are now. You're up to here in manure. And I'm not talking about nation. I'm talking about your foreign policy. You lost your friends and markets in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. You antagonized your neighbors next door in Mexico. You cannot find common language with Canadians. You cannot even settle your own domestic problems with your blacks, Hispanics, and Chinese or whoever else lives in your country. You have people who chronically complain about oppressive capitalism, and yet they demand welfare check from your government, which has nothing to do with capitalism. It has something to do with socialism. How? All these beautiful intellectuals receiving so much money cannot find a better solution. Common sense tells us people that if something doesn't work, you throw it to garbage and try something else. Why, for 68 years, you repeat the same mistake over and over and over again? Is it not time to turn and try something else, right? Now let's see. Let us see the examples. They may look innocent to you people. I will try to explain you that it is not innocent at all. It may not look sinister from the first glance on this. What I was doing for the KGB has nothing to do with espionage. Your Hollywood gives you all kind of baloney, this James Bond espionage. Bang, bang, kiss, kiss. You get excited about spies. Meanwhile, the main danger doesn't come from espionage at all. KGB spent only 10 to 15% on espionage, the classical James Bond espionage. The other 80% is spent on subversion. I cannot possibly explain you in 1 hour all that garbage which took KGB 6 years to put into my head. It took your CIA 6 months to debrief me. I cannot squeeze it all in 1 hour. But I'll try to just give you basics. And of course, if you are not satisfied, there is literature on the table. I'll show you what it is. First of all, there is a booklet, which I published myself because your publishers doesn't want to publish my book. So I did it myself. It's called Love Letter to America. That's the way I feel. And that's the way millions of people feel in my country. Believe you, we are, as a nation, not your enemies. Our common enemy is sitting in Kremlin and probably in some offices in Washington, D.C. These are the same dimwits who send your boys to Vietnam for 10 years or 12 years to die for nothing, and finally you give this country to the enemy. These are the same idiots or traitors who send your boys to Lebanon, put them all 400 men in the same building to be blown up by terrorists. These are the same idiots and traitors who sent 4 helicopters to rescue your diplomats from Tehran, and the helicopters were crushing in desert. The same traitors who now send Henry Kissinger to Latin America to save Latin Americans. God save Latin Americans from such saviors. I describe this process in that booklet, Love Letter to America. It's a small book. I asked $5. I know it's a highway robbery, but I simply must charge you $5 because I have to compete with Jane Fondas and Schmondas. Rockefeller Foundation does not support my lecturing tours. This is another paperback which is published in your country by 2 clever journalists who finally realized that American mass media is being manipulated by the KGB. It's a novel, it's a fictionalized story written by Robert Moss and Arnaud de Boschgrave. One of them worked in Vietnam for Newsweek magazine. They only changed names and dates and places to avoid legal problems like General Westmoreland had with your CBS. Otherwise, it is so accurate description of what exactly I was doing for many years that I can't even recognize my former colleagues. Both of these books, I think, is the minimum that you should read to understand what I'm talking about tonight. If you are stingy, you don't have $5, have both of them for $5. And then finally, for some of you who are more interested in specifics, I especially recommend it for mass media. This is a description of exactly what services your journalists render to the KGB. It is called World Thought Police. It is a description of Novosti Press agency, structure, functions, and simply list of services which your media renders to your enemy. How to recognize it, what to do about it. These are 2 things that I offer you, or rather 3 things. Each of them. Oh yes, if reading is not your cup of tea, I realize in the United States people don't read much, there's a tape for the same price. All right, now let's try to see the example. Let's listen carefully. It works ponderously, fitfully, unevenly, but 50 years after the revolution that changed the world forever, the system is foisted with whistles and life. It bubbles with life. Life! The system which killed 1/4 of its own people, 66 million, is bubbling with life, according to Look magazine. Do you understand? Not too many Americans realize what they are reading. Here, another paragraph. If an honest democratic election were held in the Soviet Union today, Communist Party would win. Do you understand what they're writing to you? How many parties are in USSR? 1. Okay. Make a wild guess. Which party would win if there is a free election?